Welcome to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. Creative Vitality Jam Sessions and I walk in solidarity and as allies for equality, justice, and respect because Black lives matter. And we will keep in motion in order for change to come. I'm Helen Pickett, and today's guest is Celia Fushille, the artistic director of Smuin Ballet. Celia and I have known each other since 1982 as students in the San Francisco Ballet School. Welcome, Celia.
Thank you, Helen. It's great to be here with you today.
Oh, it's so good to see you. This is my way I get to see all of my friends and colleagues. It's been a really great connection point. And plus, we get to hear from really formidable artists like yourself.
Thank you.
I start everybody with this question: where are you in the world?
That's a great question, right? With this new world of Zoom calls, we could be anywhere. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area in Pacifica, California.
Beautiful. Oh, it's a beautiful part of the world. I don't know about you, but my forest walks have been a balm to me during these months, just to get out and be with nature. You're near the ocean, so I can only assume.
Absolutely. I mean, being in touch with nature is providing solace and is a source of creativity too, because what a crazy time we're living in. Who would have thought?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're ready for some new leadership, aren't we?
Oh, yes, we are.
Celia, the first question is many layered, but I find it so impressive. And I actually knew this at the time when I worked with you first on Pedal and then on Oasis, that you have not only been the artistic director of Smuin Ballet since 2007, but you were also the executive director at the same time from 2008 till 2014. Besides it being a formidable task, these are two very different jobs. Did these combined leadership roles hone your perception of what a ballet company is as an art and as, I guess, being monetized, right?
Well, it's a very left brain, right brain thing. And I had some of my trustees that are from the business world that were just stunned and said, how could you make that lateral move? I'd like to think it makes me a more pleasant artistic director to work with, just because I understand the cost of things. And I'm not an artistic director that's going to say, well, I want it, go find the money for it. So I think it makes me more collaborative with my managing director and, able to discuss how we find a way. And that's what this era now is. It's about how we find a way. There was certainly a learning curve for me. I was grateful that my board had the faith in me. It was a very crazy time in our company's history after Michael Smuin passed away suddenly. And then they asked me to step into the artistic director role, which I had been associate director under Michael. And even during my years of dancing, and Michael went through several executive directors and how they shift companies from time to time and finding the right relationship that would support his vision. I said, I would love to learn the business side of our world. And he said, I know you could learn it. I know you have the capacity to learn it, but I need you in the studio. And we did work really well together. Before he passed, I had retired from performing and was staging all of his existing works when the company would dance something. And then he would come in to create. And so we had this really great rapport. And so it definitely was a shift, but always an interest of mine to really have an understanding of the business side of things. So I think in the end it was helpful. I think there are times when maybe I get too caught up in that, and it might stymie my creativity. So then sometimes I have to say, okay, have faith, this is going to come together. Don't let that stop your dreaming.
Yeah, well, I also know there were moments or days where you would come into the studio when I was with your company, and you'd say, I just had to step into the studio because I had to go away from the office for a moment. I just had to be, I had to remind myself and be with the art and smell the studio. Like it's completely understandable to me that and plus, before you got your building, they were separate
Oh,
offices.
yes, exactly.
So, you weren't near, you couldn't just step into the studio. You had to get in your car and go to the studio or take the walk. And I'm sure
Yes.
now with your new, and we'll get there, I really want to mention your new building, but I'm sure, you know, well, it's actually the next couple of questions, so I'll get there in a second. But could you see a greater this is kind of with the last question. Could you see a greater possibility with this knowledge? I think you answered that pretty much, but I guess yeah. Could you see a greater possibility with that?
I think so. I think it is, knowledge is power. And I think that there needs to be an understanding of what is realistically possible. And if we happen to see roadblocks in our way, it helps us to understand how we might circumvent those. So I think it's a good thing to have an understanding of the business side. And I know we're going to get to talking about empowering women, but I like to talk to all of my dancers. What are you interested in? Where do you want to go from here? And this dance field is incredible, but when one is in the middle of their career, they're just thinking of those moments on the stage and how gratifying that is. But it isn't something everyone can do forever. Clearly, the body does not last forever. And I know many young dancers that stop early just so that they will still have the physical ability to be able to choreograph and be a physical choreographer. And so there are so many areas to work in, and that's something that we're taking advantage of right now this season. Since it's going to be such a bizarre season, we're offering our dancers internships in every facet of our organization, from production to artistic to administrative to marketing to development. Do you want to learn how to write a grant? Do you want to, it's open it up. And so it's incredible, but my 14 dancers have signed up for every single category, some in several categories. So it's really so exciting to see what this bizarre time is causing us to do. And perhaps we have some leniency because we're not a union company. And, we've always been kind of like a family. Michael was like that. It sounds trite perhaps, but we're a small, tight group, and people support one another. And in this bizarre time where the dancers have been having to shelter, when I started letting them go into the studio, 1 or 2 together if they're a pod, just to be able to go back into a studio and move and maybe just run across the studio instead of doing bar at the kitchen table, was just so, they were just so grateful for that. So I'm trying to open up opportunities and to get dancers to understand that there are many ways to contribute creatively in this business. And so this is going to be a year of broadening and
Yeah,
opening up opportunities.
I love the idea of opening up in all the areas for internships. What a brilliant idea, Celia. Talk about, yes, talk about taking the time and saying, what can we do with it? And I'm hearing more and more of these stories. I think we got out of the rut. If people were in the rut of, the fear rut. But wow, what a great idea. I mean, beautiful. So let's see. I think we really, yes. Okay, during your tenure as director of Smuin Ballet, you completed its first capital campaign and moved into the company's new home in 2019, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's almost been a year that we've been in the building now, so
amazing. And I
life
got to
changing.
it was almost done, but you took me on a tour and it's a beautiful space. And I love the neighborhood. Um, so yeah, I had a chance to see it. Um, how do you foresee this shift shaping your company's trajectory? Will you be able to have showings in the space? And will your education and your open class schedule be able to increase?
Well, prior to this, because we, as you mentioned, used to sublease an office space and sublease from a ballet studio, a ballet school, the hours that we could be in the studio were very few, only until their after school classes started at 4 o'clock. So we had to compress our day into a 9 to 4 schedule every single day. And so it became clear to me, it was a 10-year project of mine as I started talking to our board and just saying, we have got to do this. We need our own building. We need our own space, whether it was a long-term lease or a building that we actually owned. Real estate in San Francisco is so expensive, but I just said, we need to have a place where we control the schedule, because we were not offering classes. We did not have that ability because it was viewed as a competition with the school we were subleasing from. So we couldn't offer our own classes. We had only enough hours to put our programs together in the studio. So we weren't able to have any kind of outreach and education program. And so there were so many limitations, and I could see that without a place in which we controlled the schedule, and this is putting on my business hat, we needed other opportunities for revenue. That was simply the way. I looked at companies across the country of our budgetary size, and every one of them has a school, and that school supports it, whether it's producing dancers, it's generating revenue, it's producing trainees for the company. So in myriad ways, it was contributing to the success of the company. And I said, we're just not going to make it if we don't. And it wasn't until I compared the 990s of other companies to be able to show these numbers to my board. It wasn't just me whining and having an artistic fit. I need my building. I need my space. It was really a need. It was really about our survival and our sustainability. And so that was really the crux of the matter. And once I convinced the board of that, we began to try to find a long-term lease, and that became very difficult because we were competing with a lot of these tech companies, these startups, and they would come in and offer 10 cents more a square foot and offer to pay the rent up front for 2 years. They had VC money behind them. It's like, how could a nonprofit ballet company compete with that? So we realized after a couple of these failed attempts that we needed to just bite the bullet and buy a building. And so we started looking at warehouse type structures, and we had never before.
Dancer found your building, right?
Yes,
Sure, yeah.
exactly. One of my former dancers, and Helen, John is going to come back to join us this year. Our season is a little bit shortened, but that's giving me one more couple, 2 people that already are in a pod. So
Oh, great.
it's so great.
He will never retire.
I mean, he's still very young. He's in his 30s, and he's still been doing small pickup things because he got into real estate and actually so brought us this building. He did bring it to our attention, and we had started to have conversations with various donors and things like that, and kind of to assess if there would be enough support for something of this magnitude. But I had never sat down and asked somebody for a 7-figure gift. And we didn't know if that kind of support was out there. And as we started to do our research and have preliminary conversations, I mean, we managed to do it. And so it was a labor of love, but the building is paid for. We're still just working now on paying off the construction loan, but it's opened up a huge world for us. Our new building is right on the street level, and to see children out on a field trip stop in front of our windows and just gaze at all of these dancers and then start mimicking the movements. It's just precious that we are just immersed in our community. So it's a lovely location, and it's just opened up so many possibilities. Initially, we were going to have privacy screening on the windows, and the dancers said, "Oh no, we like the windows wide open. We love it." So we will have shades if choreographers want to have time to create with privacy, but to be able to open those shades and have that immediacy with our community, and to be able to touch people every day. It is just incredible. There's a bus stop on that street, and people just walk by there, and they're looking in the window and watching what we're doing. So it's expanding our outreach. It's expanding our classes. Of course, we had to make the pivot like everyone did to Zoom classes. And my fabulous ballet master, Amy London, who has such a decade and more of running a ballet school and putting a program together, was masterful. And it's just, despite the fear of this moment and the uncertainty, it's forcing us to be creative in new ways. And our mantra this season is connection. It's contact. It's how do we stay, and pedal. I go back to pedal. That was all about contact, right, Helen? And how do we keep that contact with our patrons, with one another? How do we support one another? And so that's what this season is going to be about. At a certain moment, and I'm digressing from your question, Helen.
Yeah, great.
But at a certain moment, there's so much beautiful material out there on the internet. There's just an abundance of things to go see. New York City Ballet, or Pennsylvania Ballet, or ABT, or SFB. I mean, there's so much out there. And at first I thought, how will I ever, rise above the din and be heard? And like the Dr. Seuss book, we are here, we are here. And then I realized, I don't have to be in touch with the whole world.
No.
I just need to be in touch with our audience. And that is my goal, to just stay in touch with people until they are comfortable and we are able to come back into a theater, because that's not going to go away. We are dancers. We want to be on a stage in front of a live audience. But in the meantime, how can we keep in touch with you, and how can we connect? And so that's what our goals are this season.
I mean, in a way, or in a big way, that's what this talk show is about. That's why I created it. It was stay connected and to highlight amazing artists in this time that can be another vehicle to put in your website. It's really, talk about broadening your horizons. I use this time also to, ask myself how I can support our beloved community, So it sounds so exciting, Celia. It's just, it's so good to hear that. Because, Smuin Ballet, Michael Smuin, really strong place in my heart. So I'm really happy to hear all this. Sounds very exciting. So you alluded to this, but you were the founding member of Smuin Ballet. You were a founding member and principal dancer for 12 years. I don't know if you want to do this, but can you speak to this time with this unique perspective that you had with Michael and all the roles you created with him and the nurturing and the coaching you got from him? He was the director when I was in the school for the first 3 years. And I remember him in the studio as being a dynamic leader who was just, first of all, totally in love with the art, but he got people to be excited about the work, and he was so good at dramatic interpretations. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to speak a bit to that.
I think your assessment is totally spot on. And Michael was in many ways ahead of his time. I mean, he was blending multimedia back in the 70s and 80s, and people were not doing that then. And he wanted to, he was the first one to say, I love Giselle and I love Swan Lake, but we've already seen Giselle and we've already seen Swan Lake. What else can we do? And that was really the goal of his company. What else can this art form do? And how can we push that? And so he was super inspiring. And I think, Michael was human and he had his insecurities. And I know that the day he was going to start a ballet was his most anxiety filled day. He said, I just have to break the ice and start. And then it just flowed from there. But that day, and I remember Amy Seiwert talking to him about that, like, oh my gosh, I'm starting and I'm petrified. And he was like, join the club. That's okay. That's okay. But yes, while there may be, I don't want to say doubts, but, yes, will this work be as good as my last work? Will it be as well received? He was always trying to please himself and try to help himself to be able to communicate with his artists to help them realize his vision. And the biggest compliment for me was when we did a ballet together. It was Frankie and Johnny. It was all Latin music. And I got to play the role of Frankie. And he said, it's not very often when you can say, you have this dream in your head as a choreographer and what this narrative is going to come out to look like and what you dream it could be. And when he says, if you at the end of the day get 75% of what you dreamed, you're lucky. 80%. But with Frankie and Johnny, he just felt like he told the story, and Michael loved a narrative. And it was so fun to be able to play a character and get into that person. So that was a beautiful experience. I think for any dancer, when they have something created on them, it is just the biggest gift. It doesn't always happen in your career, and sometimes you're handed down roles which are precious. I mean, when I did get to dance some of the things I had seen the ballerinas at San Francisco Ballet dancing, that carries a weight alone. Just to say, can I fill the shoes of the person that danced this? I mean, to dance Michael's Eternal Idol, choreographed on Cynthia Gregory. I mean, the people that danced it before you, and you think, will I be worthy of that? But when you have something that is created on you, and this is really what I strive to bring to my dancers, is that opportunity. Yes, we keep Michael's legacy alive, but the importance of being the clay for the artist and letting the choreographer fashion something out of that, for the dancer to just be the blank slate and say, let's create art. And so that was a wonderful opportunity. And one of the greatest things I learned from Michael was to be fearless. And even when there is that trepidation or that anxiety, and we've certainly had enough of that in this time. I've been on weekly calls with my colleagues across the country, and everyone has been so forthcoming and sharing their concerns, their stresses, their issues during this pandemic. And yet we have to get beyond that fear to say, how can we help each other? This community has grown more tightly knit. It's so beautiful. Instead of directors getting on the phone and just hiding the things that are not going well and just saying, yeah, we had great sales, we had this, we had that. It's very real. These are conversations that we're having. In March, when people were saying, can we see Nutcracker happening? And now companies are having to cancel their Nutcrackers. And that's, something companies depend upon for their livelihood. So it's finding a new way forward and how to keep your dancers and your team engaged. I think it's a blessing right now that we have we've always been a pretty compact team, but I think it's going to allow us some flexibility and to be able to pivot quickly and try to create things in small groups and keep people active, keep our dancers active, keep our team active, and again, maintaining that connection with our audience. So that's our goal.
Yeah, yeah. You are one of the few female directors to lead a company with a budget of 3 million or higher. Is that right?
Yes.
How does your position influence the future or how do you see your position influencing the future as far as more women getting the chance to lead ballet companies, whether it's artistic or executive? The example, you being the example, have you seen have you seen a shift? Do you feel like you are able to say to young women, or have you had the conversation that, you know, this is possible? Like, have you noticed any shift happening or the conversation happening?
That's a great question. And I think the biggest thing I can be is an example.
Mm.
And how I conduct myself, how I relate to my dancers. Maybe the fact that I'm a mother changes some of that, because I have the understanding of nurturing my dancers. You know, I speak to my dancers. Sometimes I think, you know, if these were my children, you know, how would I would come from a place of compassion. You know, if you're having a hard time getting to this moment in this particular ballet, or to be vulnerable in the studio and feel safe in that. I think one of the biggest things I've been able to do is to formalize our choreography showcase. Michael was big at giving his dancers, when he was directing San Francisco Ballet, an opportunity to create if they were interested. And many of those people today are still, they're the directors and choreographers working today, many of them. And so he gave me an opportunity to choreograph, and I don't have that need, and I believe it needs to be a need that you must create. Michael was always thinking of the next project. He needed to create. So I'm a curatorial artistic director, but I formalized this process where we have our, every year or two, we do this choreography showcase. And when you asked me about the building and if we plan to do showings in the building,
Yeah.
Ironically, we converted our big studio into a black box theater and did our first choreography showcase in the building. And those were our last performances of the 2020 season. So that was the last time the company performed in front of an audience. So it was a really precious weekend that we didn't even know that would be our final performance. But it's an opportunity for all the dancers to create on one another. I don't just invite certain people to create. And Amy London, our ballet master, she nudges some people that are on the fence, like, I don't know if I'm going to create, or I've never done it before. And she helps them off the fence and says, come on, throw your name in the hat. Why not? And this year I had more women than men creating.
Oh, great.
So I think I had 5 women and 4 men.
That's great.
But it is fantastic. And for these women, especially, to be in the front of the studio, to be communicating their wishes and directions to their dancers, and to have to come in and be prepared for all of the men and women to do that. But, you know, with so many girls in ballet, a guy walks in and, oh my gosh, there's a boy, we need him. And so girls grow up in ballet thinking, I need to just blend in, literally, if you're in the corps de ballet, you need to blend in. You don't need to stand out. Be quiet, because if you're going to be disruptive, there's 4 girls here ready to take your place. And so you're not given those opportunities as often as a boy. A boy can have some outlandish behavior and, oh, isn't he cute? Isn't he, you know, he's such a character. That's permitted. But if you look through industries, that's the case. I mean, obviously, look at what we're dealing with now in our politics, in business, in boardrooms across the country. So you see this across. So I don't want to say that it's just men that are keeping women down. Women are doing a part in that too. So we all need to reflect in this time of diversity and inclusion. We need to look at what are we doing to contribute to repressing women? Are we giving people equal opportunities? I have a son and a daughter, and I didn't just teach my daughter how to do laundry. I said, Matthew, come on, we're going to go learn how to do laundry. And it's really breaking. It's a generational shift, and it's really breaking these ideas that have just been ingrained in all of us. And it's not from malice. I don't believe everybody's just evil and saying we're going to push down women, but so I want women to know that they have the opportunity. I grew up in West Texas, and I had a female artistic director at my company. So I knew that was possible. Michael, it was another way he was ahead of his time by encouraging women, and that he, when he asked me to come work with him at Smuin Ballet, I had met Michael when I had been an apprentice with San Francisco Ballet. So he asked me to join him at Smuin, and you know, I was just excited to get to do whatever he needed me to do to assist him. I was like a rehearsal assistant ballet master. And then 4 years in, he promoted me to associate director. And he said, you won't be associate director, but you will learn the job. And 11 years later, when he passed away, I had learned the job. I had by then finished dancing, and I was not thinking I was going to be artistic director, because Michael said, you know, I'm going to probably keep choreographing till I'm 75 or whatever. We'll see how it goes. But so you never know. But I was so grateful that he had that faith in me. And so I think it's opening up opportunities. And so that's what this whole internship opportunity is also this year at Smuin, is that we want people, and I've had some dancers that say, you know, I want to be an artistic director someday. I want to learn as much as I can about running a company. It's only been a guy that came forward to say that to me. But I have had some,
that is.
I have had women who wanted to be choreographers. And so the thing that we also have to retrain ourselves, I believe, is that when we are culturally and historically expecting women to just be docile and quiet and at times subservient, as soon as a woman is speaking and being authoritative, she's called pushy, or she's called, so we all need to train ourselves. Like, why would we expect allow a man to advocate for himself and not a woman? And so I think we all have to retrain ourselves. And so it's really, I believe that this, with everything happening nationally, it's really a time for us to reflect internally about how we contribute unknowingly to inequality, to disparity, and you know, take this time to reflect, and I think this is the gift that there are silver linings to this time, and I feel like it is for me one of them. I'm reading a book about Frederick Douglass right now. Would I have taken the time to do that? I'm just trying to really have an understanding of what anyone who has has faced adversity and any kind of discrimination, like what is it for them? And you know, we're talking about walking in people's shoes. It's really having an understanding of that. But I've even noticed myself that when you know, I've had some strong women dancers, and when they come to me and it's to me, I've had to look at myself like, why did I resist when a woman was strong and came to talk to me about what she wanted? And so I have to adjust how I respond and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and absorb that. And how do I respond to that?
Hmm.
And
You reminded me of Michelle Obama's speech last night about walking in others' shoes,
yeah,
and her speech was just amazing and eloquent and informative and humble and empathetic, and it was all those things that you want in a leader. And it was just so heartening to see a woman, you know, a woman who's so accomplished, you know, to speak to the nation again about what a good leader is, and she is such an example for all of us. And I really my heart just opened, and I was like, see, this is
it's
possible, you know.
possible. Exactly.
Have this, we had 8 years of that kind of leadership. It is there, and a lot of people want this leadership. And just hearing her talk and hearing Cuomo talk, and you know, it was just a great start to the convention, I thought. And I hear you with what you're saying, and it's yeah, it is. You basically answered one of the three questions I ask everybody about supporting and building an equitable community, you know. But you really went into that in such a beautiful way. So you know, now I'm going to just ask you two questions I ask everybody. Do you have a favorite or impactful memory, maybe a joyful one? I know there are many. You've led an amazing life. Do you have one that comes to you, a favorite or impactful memory from your creative life or life in general?
Well, I felt so blessed to have this second opportunity at my dancing career, because a knee injury kept me out of continuing at the San Francisco Ballet. And years later, my knee healed, and I had. So when Michael approached me, it was just, I could not have imagined that I would have this chance. And really, it was about, just give me anything to dance. I don't care if I'm in the back row. I just love to be on the stage and performing. And I loved Michael's musicality, and that really worked with how I heard music. And so that was a big part of it. And there were so many moments when he, I mean, again, just being in the studio and having something created on you for your abilities. And I always loved taking on a story. I think my biggest stretch was probably in The Blue Angel, playing the Marlene Dietrich character. It was not my personality. And I did a lot of research. I read her biography and really wanted to understand the persona. And it was a thrilling opportunity for me to get to do that. Definitely a highlight for me to stretch as an artist and an actor. So that was really a great opportunity for me. But one highlight, which I never expected, was to actually get to be on the stage with my daughter. And she, Michael did a ballet, Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, which there was a narrator who was dressed as a little mini conductor, and all the dancers were the instruments of the orchestra. And she had to read this text. And at the end of the ballet, she stayed on stage to bow. And I remember one Mother's Day bowing with my daughter on stage, and I thought, I never would have thought I'd be on the stage, because I had just had such a wacky career, and my life has been such that I was never doing things when my peers were doing them.
Yeah.
I mean, I was getting married and had my family, and then came back to dancing. Now you see that more frequently, but it was certainly a juggling act right through my career with Smuin as I was dancing, to be also a room parent and running to parent teacher conferences and having a carpool. It wasn't just on top of going home and helping with the scheduling and the casting and the so it was just all consuming. And but that moment on the stage with my daughter was you know, definitely something I could never have imagined. So it was a juggle with my children, certainly. And there were times when I felt I should stop dancing because I should be home with my kids. And initially my daughter would say, "Where are you going?" And I said, I've got to go to the theater tonight. She said, "You're never home." And I thought, oh my God, it's like, who's the daughter and who's the mother here? It's like a role reversal. And, but then my children came to understand and appreciate and respect me for my career. And one of the biggest gifts Michael gave me was at my final performances in San Francisco at the gala that year. He had, unbeknownst to me, contacted my children, and you know, one was a senior in high school by then, and the other, or one was just starting her senior year, and one was in college already. But he contacted them and asked them to write an essay about their mother as a dancer, and he actually put it into the program. And I literally broke down when I saw that. He showed it to me at the tech rehearsal for the gala, and I broke down crying, because I thought, my children understand me, and they understand the sacrifices that they too had to make, because I wasn't home every minute. Sometimes I was on a tour, or sometimes I was, you know, performing and I got home late or something. But they knew I was there for them as much as I could, and they understood what I was doing. So it is such a juggling act for women, and I think women today are able to communicate what they need in a partner, because it takes a partnership to make that happen. And there has traditionally been so much on women in the home. There's been ample debate about that, and women picking up the slack. And now during this time of sheltering, and who's homeschooling the kids as well as doing the housework and what have you. And it's something that has to be brought to the front, that, you know, women should have these opportunities to excel and advance, and those dialogues should happen.
Yeah, and they are just like they're happening right now.
Yeah.
And this is what's so important. It's like we are having the conversations now. You know, I feel like that is also something that's come out of this time a little bit more. We're talking more about them instead of just hoping for the best. We're talking about these things because talking about it also perhaps hopefully brings it more to action. And I think that's what we're talking about, like time for action. We've molded over. I was talking with Teresa Ruth Howard a couple of sessions ago, and, you know, we brought up the fact that, you know, change happens as fast or as slow as people need it to happen. You know, like when you hear someone say, "Oh yeah, we'd like this to happen, but it takes time." And then you'll see another change happen like that. That's also a real thing. You know, like change can happen as fast or as slow as you need it to happen. So I think that's also something else that's coming up now too. Like, I don't think we have to wait any longer. You know, we can implement these changes.
Yes.
So
yes.
We're on the same page there. Last question. Do you have an insight or daily inspiration that you can share with us about living the creative life?
I would have to say my reflections on gratitude are really a source of a lot of creativity, just because we can look at what's not working and what we don't have, and especially during this bizarre time of this pandemic. But when I look at the possibilities, I'm so grateful for the team that I get to work with, and the way we're all working together to find a way forward. That I'm not alone in this, and it's the ideas that are coming forth and the willingness of my team to do things that may not be part of their job description. They're in it to they're in there for the love of the company, and it's just such. I'm so grateful. I have so much gratitude, and I feel like that is a big source of inspiration for me. And we'll find a way through this, and we will keep creating. And some of even when we return to the theater, some of the things that we've learned to do now are going to be part of the way moving forward. So we're making changes. So I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. It's going to be different, and that's okay.
Yes.
For some, change can be difficult, but it's looking at what opportunities are there and what's possible.
I too am excited about the future, about this. Yeah, I am too. I'm with you. I'm
Great.
excited about the future. I really am. Celia, I've always had so much respect for you, but hearing you today, so inspirational, such a generous, good-hearted, formidable woman. You are an inspiration to so many, and you spread the love. It is no wonder that your board and your dancers are with you loyally. You're just a remarkable woman, and I'm so happy to be in your circle. So thank you so much for this talk today.
Helen, thank you for the opportunity. And truly, when I went into the studio, when you were working with my dancers, you also fed me. So thank you for that. I mean that. You are a creative force, and we have to support each other. It was great, really great chatting with you today.
Would you mind staying with me while I just do the end of the show?
Sure.
And then we'll say our final goodbye. Okay. So I'm going to direct people to smuinballet.org to find out more information about your company. Do you have any other social media that you'd like to say here where people can, keep up to date with you besides that website?
Facebook and Instagram.
Great.
Smuin Ballet on Facebook and Instagram too.
Great. Okay. In the description box below, you will find out more information, including a small bio about Celia and who's going to be in the coming sessions. You can see 2 sessions every week, Tuesday and Sunday. And on our next session, you will meet Raphael Coumes-Marquet. He is an independent stager for David Dawson and rehearsal director and guest teacher. Gracie Spina, as always, I want to thank you for all you do for this program. I want to thank the beautiful and resilient dance community. I am humbled every day to be a part of you, and you bring so much and have brought so much joy to my life. So thank you to the community. Keep reimagining creativity. Until next time, I bid you all things wonderful, and thank you so much. Bye.